Okay, so hey guys and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my instant reaction to Essuman winning via unanimous decision versus Josh Taylor. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you did or do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. So this is Essuman upsetting the apple cart out in Scotland and really, silencing the crowd, in which was a big crowd out there for the homecoming of Josh Taylor. And, yes, he's fought there quite a few times in that same venue, Taylor, but it seemed a bit different there tonight. It seemed like there was a lot of fans just really there for him, and, fans were booing Essuman, and it just seemed like there was something really in the air just for everybody to really get behind Josh Taylor. And it just didn't work out, unfortunately. And I mean, everybody saw that he started off quite well, Josh Taylor, and he was landing shots well. He was timing Essuman, and it seemed like the speed would have just been too much for Essuman to start off with in the earlier rounds. And he was following off his jab nicely, typically of what we've known from Josh Taylor in the past when he had gotten to the higher levels in which he did achieve, where his jab was, really good. And like I say, he was setting it off to then go to the body to then switch it up to throw uppercuts. And it was looking really nice and really fluid. And he looked quite natural again for throwing it, like he was, like I say, back in the heyday, I suppose. And Essuman seemed like he was out of it. He seemed a bit, too tense, a bit too stale. He couldn't keep up with the speed at all, and he looked like he was always just a step behind realistically for the most parts of the early rounds. There was one round in which, in the early first six, in which kind of swayed back and forth, where Essuman hurt Taylor, and no, Taylor hurt Essuman, then Essuman hurt Taylor, and it looked like that was a good round. And it looked like it showcased that both fighters could be hurt, and they both still carried a good level of power. And that was, of course, a question mark that was around Josh Taylor for this fight, if he could, still take a shot. He hadn't been knocked out or hurt realistically too badly in any of his, fights, but he had taken a few tough results, and especially moving up to the welterweight division against a physically strong Essuman, who, yes, did get dropped in his second to last fight versus Owen Cooper, and that was, showcasing he can be hurt, but it did seem like he was physically the much stronger, the much more dominant Essuman, and that's when he came into his own. And it was very impressive, the run of rounds in which he went on to win. And he is somebody who really lives up to his nickname, being the Engine. And there's not too many fighters at 36 years of age that can be moving and throwing as much as he was and just keep continually having success. Yes, fundamentally, technically, there is probably some underlying things in which perhaps make him, or fighters a bit higher up into the world levels might look at it and see as possible weaknesses and possible things to exploit to somebody like an Essuman. But inevitably, he was physically way much better than that of Josh Taylor, and he wore him down. He continuously threw in combinations, threw in bunches. Even if he missed a couple, he always carried on with two more, even if he was going down to the body. Like I say, he was switching it up really well. There was so much power behind every single punch. Credit to Josh Taylor for being able to stick it out and stay there. Both guys took some really big shots, and there was rounds in which, Josh Taylor, even in the later part of the fight, was still having success and was still able to land well. But inevitably, like I say, Essuman, the run that he went on, the fact that he was able to get Josh Taylor up against the ropes so many times, it was really impressive to see. And just like the second Jack Catterall fight, we did see a Josh Taylor who, I don't know if it's him questioning himself, or if he's if he gets tired, or I don't really know what it is, but he just realistically stops throwing with intent, and especially the jab, which, like I say, has been such a good weapon for him in his prime, and even was, like I mentioned, in the earlier part of the fight. But he just stopped throwing it into the later rounds, and when he did try and throw it, it was weak. It was just pouring out, and it really wasn't stopping Essuman at all. And that was what was so important in them early rounds, to really create the distance and make Essuman swing and miss, because he can be made to do that. He's not an excellent mid-range fighter, Essuman, and Josh Taylor was having success, but then, he just kind of let Essuman get into such a groove where he was just continually winning each and every single round past pretty much round 6, and completely flipped the whole fight on its head and was able to do enough to get the decision victory. And that makes him not vacant, that makes him WBO global welterweight champion, winning that vacant title. And it's not really something that does too much, that title, but I suppose it gets him into a good position in at least the WBO world rankings. And I mean, I'm glad that the judges did give it in his favour and saw it as a unanimous decision, because Josh Taylor looked upset and he looked annoyed, and you could see that on his face. And I don't realistically know where he's going to go now. Yes, that wasn't a devastating defeat, but at the same time, it's going to be tough for him to ever be able to get back now, and he will have to take a real significant step down if he's going to be able to, get good opposition. And possibly he might want to do that, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes and, goes off into retirement now. But for Essuman, like I say, he's getting himself in a good position in the world rankings after his last performance and his last couple of performances. He's been talking about, fighting at a world level. And yes, he had that fight versus Harry Scarf, which didn't go well for him and, did push him back a little bit. And perhaps if he'd won that fight, he would have gone on to fight for a more, higher world level. But this feels like now it's the time for him to be able to do that. If, now than never, realistically, for his career, like I say, mentioning his age. And it will be interesting to see who he goes in against. I mean, realistically, I mentioned in my prediction video, which I did get this fight right as well. I'm actually got all of my predictions right for this week, which I was quite happy about. But yeah, I did mention the fact of him fighting perhaps some like a Chukadzian. I think that could be a great contest, and that could possibly be thrown into an interim world title fight or a final eliminator, because Chukadzian really didn't have a bad contest versus Ennis in the second fight especially, and just seeing how good Ennis was against Stanionis last time out, that's probably built the reputation of Chukadzian even more. Perhaps, Ennis was clearly overlooking Chukadzian for the rematch because he's already beaten him once and he wasn't a world champion probably, but I think an Echo Essuman versus a Chukadzian fight could be an excellent fight. And yes, maybe that doesn't sell amazingly because I doubt either of them are massive ticket sellers, but it could be put on a big show, maybe a return show in Nottingham. I'm sure the Nottingham fans would be more than up for having a new name in and amongst, the Nottingham stable. Realistically, they just had Lee Wood, and now Lee Wood's just got stopped badly against Kakache. So realistically, Nottingham is crying out for a new name to come through. So possibly a fight like that could happen in Nottingham, a homecoming main event in which Essuman really does deserve for what he's done in his career. But yeah, that's talking about that fight. Moving on to a couple of the other contests in which I wanted to quickly touch upon that was on this card. The co-main event, Nathaniel Collins versus Lee McGregor. That was for the vacant WBC silver featherweight title. And of course, Nathaniel Collins won via TKO in round 4. Quite dramatic stoppage. Again, it was a bit of a rugged performance, a bit of a raw performance from Collins, but you can see that he has that aggressive nature. You can see that he knows how to finish fights well. Perhaps that is the end of Lee McGregor's career. After the Ayala loss, that was quite a bad loss for McGregor, and that did push him back a bit. But then he went and picked up that good win versus Isaac Lowe, and perhaps people were then, getting a bit more encouraged about his career and thinking he could go on to, still achieve the heights in which he was aimed to achieve. But now, you got to give him credit for taking the fight against Collins. It was always going to be a tough ask, and Collins really showcased that he was much superior. It was a war. He counterpunched very well, Collins, and always outlanded McGregor and landed the more significant shots. And inevitably, McGregor did look weak and couldn't handle Collins, and like I say, did end up getting stopped quite badly realistically in round 4. And like I say, that's a big win for Collins. He's been calling out the world champions. Do I think that's going to happen realistically after this? No. Do I think there could be some good featherweight matchups that aren't world title fights? Perhaps. It will be interesting to see. I don't think he'll get put into fight as a main event just after this fight. I think he'll probably need another co-main against a fringe world level type of fighter before he goes on, because yes, Lee McGregor is a good fighter and was tipped to go on to big things. But, again, going back to that Ayala loss, first of all, that loss didn't age well because Ayala went on to fight Davis and lost quite badly. But, that did stunt McGregor's prospect status, and Collins now has to go on to then fight a world level, if not even realistically a high European level fighter, before he goes on to fight for a world title, just in my opinion. But to go on to speak about the final fight in which I'm going to be speaking about is Moses Itauma winning via KO in round 2 versus Mike Balogun to remain or become WBO Intercontinental and WBA International Heavyweight Champion. And that was pretty much what everybody expected. I mean, Moses Itauma, the young guy, I believe he's only 19 or 20, and the amount of pressure in which he's got on him is insane, realistically. Being tipped as the best British heavyweight prospect since Anthony Joshua, realistically, and he's living up to it. He's really, really living up to it. Yes, the level of opposition isn't anything too crazy, but Balogun, he got stopped versus Gassiev, but other than that, he was 20 and he got 20 wins on his record, and some of them had been, not at a bad level, and he made him look really poor. I mean, his timing is excellent, his management of distance is excellent. It's just so much better than so many other heavyweights. We look at so many other heavyweights and they're just so, I don't even know how to explain it. Clumsy, just staggering about, walking forwards, trying to be bullish. But Itauma is really using his youthfulness and really looking spiteful with every performance, and he's coming into his own. And this is his time. He's really showcasing that this is his time in his career. And again, like I say, another early stoppage. He could have easily overlooked this opponent. He's been tipped with some really good names in the likes of Martin Bakole, Filip Hrgovic. I would love a Filip Hrgovic fight. I think that could be a great fight for him. But yeah, it's great to see, and I think he definitely isn't far away from these big fight opportunities. And yeah, he is a really exciting name, and with the backing he's got with Riyadh season and everything like that, like I say, he's really got an exciting future ahead of him, and I just hope that he continues to progress in which the same way in which he has been. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like video if you did indeed like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.